Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Shirley Chu. I'm the VP of Communications at AAJA, and welcome to our 2022 special election for the Senior Vice President role candidate forum. Before we get started, I just wanted to share some housekeeping and details for today's forum. First and foremost, please abide by the code of conduct. HQ will drop that in the chat so that you will have that to reference. Please stay muted when you are not speaking. That mostly applies to the panelists, and I believe attendees will not be able to join the conversation, but you can join in the chat. To give fair time to each candidate, everyone will have an opportunity to answer each question, and they will each be given 2 minutes to respond to each question. We will also rotate the speaking order halfway through the questions just to make it fair on who starts. So without further ado, the candidates are Amrita A. Joseph and Frank B. I will let the candidates introduce themselves with their opening statements. We will start with Amrita and then go to Frank. And I'd like to remind the candidates to please keep your introductions to under 2 minutes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you who are tuning in for this opportunity. I'm Amrita Lottie Joseph, and before I was a business and sales consultant, I had my roots in journalism, working for Gannett newspapers, and I did some radio as well. And it was during that time that I really got to cover local issues of interest to Pacific Islander communities, specifically the Chamorro people in Guam. And that's when it really became evident to me how important these types of issues were, and the representation, how important that was, especially as this, minority group was challenging the federal government's presence on their island, and especially after they felt that the federal government had already taken so much. But also on a personal level, I'm obviously passionate about Asian American issues because I am an Asian American. Growing up, I pretty much equated being Indian to being Hindu. And it wasn't until I reached college that I really realized that, no, there are so many different pieces to being Asian American and Indian. And that became important to me as well, as I married an Indian Catholic. And then, finally, I've just been wanting to get back to my journalism roots, and that's why I want to serve this organization. And given my service contributions to other nonprofit organizations in programming and sponsorship, I think I can add a lot of value here as well. So thank you.
It's my turn. Okay. Hi, I'm Frank. My name is Frank B. I'm currently the AAJA New York chapter president. I'm also the director of tools and technology at the Minneapolis Star Tribune. I just moved to Minneapolis last week. And my role at the Minneapolis Star Tribune is really to raise the floor and raise the ceiling of our entire news operation. I have been trying to do that at AAJA New York as well. And I think my role as senior vice president would be to do the same thing, to raise the floor and to raise the ceiling. I think a lot of the floor is just making sure that chapters are working more closely together, affinity groups, all using the resources that we share together. And I think that will gradually and eventually raise the ceiling and raise the potential of what we can do as an organization cohesively. So thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for listening. And back to you, Shirley.
Thank you both. Now we'll go into our questions. As a reminder, each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer each question, and we'll rotate the speaking order halfway through the questions. So the first question is, could you please share why you're running for national office? Amrita, we'll start with you.
Sure. As I noted, I really am trying to get back to my journalism roots. That's why I signed up for AAJA in the first place. And it just so happened, I wanted to get involved locally as well, but I had not been receiving local notifications about, what was going on. So I think that some of the value that I could add to the organization at a national level is in three ways. One, related to membership engagement and participation rate. Two, streamlining some of our tech platforms and like the tools that we're using, and I'll explain in a minute. And just in general, ramping up programming for all types of our members. I know we've got great programming, but I'm sure there are others like me that are also maybe not currently journalists, but are kind of going back and forth and might be in non-traditional roles. So I look forward to serving that community as well. Let me know on the time. But as it relates to member engagement and participation, I think the sheer fact that only 2 of us are running for this role when there was a huge email blast posted to all of the members indicates to me that I think there is an opportunity to increase engagement. So maybe there is some additional outreach we can do, and also even at the local level, get more of our members involved and interested to participate in some of these national activities. And as it relates to the tech platforms and tools, I can tell you, even in the course of preparing for this forum, I tried to look at so many different areas of the website and different, look for emails. And then I was, pointed to a Slack channel, et cetera. I think there are opportunities to streamline the places where we have information. And for those that don't work, we can remove them.
All right, thank you. Frank?
My motivation for running is, I've been with the organization in a lot of different capacities and different kind of perspectives. So convention programming, I was on the governing board before, and chapter leadership now. So I've seen the organization from a lot of different angles. And I think, like Amrita said, there's a lot of opportunities to kind of continue to raise the floor and raise the ceiling. Just keep saying that because I feel like that's a good analogy to put, us into. And it's like, all these opportunities, I think it really helps to have that different perspective from all these different angles. Like I was formerly in Voices as well, did ELP a couple of years ago. And I know kind of all the different parts and how we can all continue to kind of work cohesively together to improve what we do in our mission as AAJ. So that's my big motivation. I feel like I have that perspective. I feel like I can make a big impact coming from what I've seen of the organization.
Great. Next question is, how did you first get involved with AAJA?
Is that for me or for Frank?
Yes, sorry, Amrita, you can start for this one too.
Sure. So I'm smiling because really, this is my first involvement with AAJA. I wish I could have said that, I was involved with the local activities, but as I mentioned, I found it a bit difficult to get connected locally. Now I know after sifting through a few documents. So this is my first engagement. However, I know some might be thinking, well, how can you expect to serve at a national level of an organization that you have just now joined? Well, as I mentioned, I do have service experience in the past. I think we as journalists anyway are thrown into so many new situations. But just to highlight some of my previous service experience, I have served on the board for 3 years at an alumni association as a conference programming chair, organizing end-to-end the speaker lineup, the agenda, the run of show for a conference attended by 350 plus executives. I have worked on the sponsorship committee to raise in excess of $60K in funds for the organization. And just throughout my career, I've also held leadership positions and led teams and served to improve operations, processes, and to increase engagement throughout my team and organization. So I do have that experience that I can bring to the table.
All right, Frank?
I started in AAJ when I was in high school a little bit, and it's just a really short story, right? I'm back in Minneapolis now. It was kind of a big moment for me as a youth, as a professional that I am now, because when I was growing up, I grew up in a very homogenous community, and I always wanted to become a journalist, but it was really hard to find someone that looked like me that was a journalist. And then one day I was in high school newspaper class, and someone gave me a heads up that AAJ Minnesota had an event that weekend where we were going to build boats out of milk cartons and race them. like a aquatennial festival in Minneapolis. I said, why not? I didn't have any other plans that weekend. I was a high school kid. I met with all these journalists, non-Asian ones, but like the personalities on TV and things like that. And that really gave me the confidence that, there are people out there, I just haven't found them yet. And I found out that all those people were in AAJ. And then eventually I did voices in college, and then I did ELP. And I really think I found my community in AAJ, and they continue to inspire me every day. So my start really started as, come hang out with us. And then it's kind of led into opportunities and a career path that I'm really thankful for today.
Great. Okay, next question is, what do you hope to bring to the organization if you are elected? And we'll start with you, Amrita.
Sure. Well, I think just from the previous responses, you can see that I would bring definitely a fresh perspective. I think that can, bring some renewed energy as well to the organization, some fresh perspectives, energy. Also, I think given my business background and my very analytical way of thinking, my goal is to really use data-driven, assessments, analytics to figure out where are there opportunities for us to grow. So when it comes to that membership engagement, I want to take a look, take stock of our membership and find out who are the ones that are actually engaged. So maybe this is a survey, maybe this is looking at our attendance rates, and slicing that data to figure out where are people engaging from. How many times are people actually attending events? So is it just concentrated among a few members, or are we actually seeing a high participation rate across our membership? So that's one thing I want to look at. And, I think that will help inform how we can increase the engagement. And also as part of that quantitative survey, I would like to ask our members what types of programming they would like to see, where they see the most value right now through the affinity groups or events that are being held, and where they don't. What is bringing them to what keeps them engaged with AAJA? So that's one of the things that I hope to, accomplish. And as I mentioned, with streamlining the tech platforms, I'd like to get a sense of, how often these are being used. Again, very quantitative and data-driven. And I think that general data-driven mentality can help boost some of our operations at AAJA.
All right, Frank?
I hope to accomplish in my term really working together. As chapter president in New York, we have other chapters on the East Coast, we have chapters on the West Coast, we have chapters everywhere. But I think from this position, SVP, it's a really great opportunity to work together more, not just with chapters, but with affinity groups and other parts of the organization, right? I think together, like cohesiveness, we can unlock a lot of opportunities, right? I'll just use a quick example we're doing in New York, but we're running the New York City Marathon. We have 7 people running the marathon on Team AAJ, represents 5 different chapters. And I've been using this silly analogy, but it's a fundraising train, right? We have 5 chapters that are all getting a slice of the fundraising pie in that way. And it's a cohesive strategy that is bringing in a lot of money, and that's going to support everything that we do in AAJ. So I hope a lot more of that is what I hope to accomplish. And I think it's the strategic initiatives of bringing us together and tactically just putting us in the same room when we can. I know there's a lot of things that prevent us from doing it, a lot of challenges, but also one other thing that I think is really important to me as something that I've seen from all different perspectives at AAJ is just recognizing we are all volunteers, right? Aside from staff, we are all volunteers. And we have to accomplish some things on the floor level, such as how do we address, developing leaders who join AAJ who want to become leaders, right? And using it as a place to practice and to learn and things like that. And to just recognize, the work that we do is really impactful, but we are all volunteers at the end of the day. How do we strategize this, prepare for it, and prepare our chapters to be successful despite these challenges that we face?
Great. Okay, so we are going to switch the speaking order for these next few questions. The first one is, what is the biggest challenge our organization is facing, and how do you plan to tackle it? So we'll start with you, Frank.
Biggest challenge, I think, is the floor in a way. the biggest challenge I think is a floor in recognizing like how do we work together more. I really think that's what it is. That's the biggest challenge. How do we find places for us to get together, right? To share strategies, right? I think one of the best examples of it is like Trivia Bowl was one of those examples. Trivia Bowl, founded by the LA chapter many years ago. But that's one of those things where if we all got in the same room, we could share best practices. And that's something that can be used as a mechanism to fundraise for every single other chapter, right? Creating some of those things, fixing that floor, and then eventually, you know, raising the ceiling, gets more money, there's more opportunities. Maybe LA chapter versus New York chapter versus Minnesota chapter. They have different techniques, different strategies for fundraising through something like Trivia Bowl or something else. I think our challenge and something that we need to do more is just getting people in the same room, talking more. I know we only have like really one kind of thing or one tentpole every single year, which is convention, but what's stopping us from creating more of those things, right? It doesn't even have to be in person. What are some of those questions and how do we address those? So I think that's one of our challenges that I would love to address as SVP.
Amrita?
Cool. Yes, absolutely. So, you know, again, I have to reiterate, I think working through, I think one of the biggest opportunities is to increase engagement and participation across the board. I from speaking to some of the members and in different parts of the US, I think what AAJA does well is like you've got your very gung-ho engaged members who are there at many of the events. They love it. They believe in AAJA's mission and they're very passionate about it. These are their close friends. But at the same time, there are also those I've spoken to and they say, yeah, I haven't really gone to any of the events. I pay my dues. So this is where I think like we've got members who pay their dues. We need to figure out what will add value for them. I think AAJA also does an excellent job of catering to the students and providing resources for students who are going to be entering the workforce or like new grads that do enter the workforce. But again, I think there's an opportunity to increase that participation rate among those who are already very well established in the field. So that's where I plan to focus my efforts.
Great. Next question. What do you envision accomplishing during your term? I know you have touched on this a little bit already, but just to go back to that point. Frank?
Something that's self-sustaining, right? Something that where, you know, we can create something where it just makes sense. It's like a TikTok thing, like just things that just make sense, right? Like creating those structures that make sense for our organization. And I think part of that is like, I'll touch back on something I know, you know, National is working or HQ is working on this a lot, but things that make sense like Camp AAJ, right? Just getting leaders together and just talking, right? Other things that make sense, like there's some tech things I know that would make sense, right? Like getting membership rosters more updated more frequently so chapters can do their thing, right? I think, you know, a lot of that takes effort and takes work, but I think the best way to do it is something I say a lot to the folks that I have the pleasure of serving with on the New York chapter board is just creating structure, creating a cadence where the first time it's like very hard, maybe kind of hard, right? It takes a lot of time, but maybe the second time, the third time, it just gets easier and easier. And at some point, it just becomes a habit, becomes muscle memory, and it could be self-sustaining beyond, you know, my term or someone else's term. So maybe just encompassing, you know, creating structures that make sense.
Sure. I think from my side, since I am a very much quantitatively oriented person, results oriented person, I think AAJA probably already has some data that we could work with, survey data of its membership and programming. I want to use that as the benchmark. And like I said, if I were to launch some type of assessment into our membership and engagement, I would hope that by the end of my term, or even by the end of the year, we see increased participation, and that would be measured by new, what do we call it? Not just new members, but among our existing members, we've got more people actually attending events, getting engaged, talking on the message boards, etc. I'm really glad actually Frank brought up the point about the rosters, because that also was a challenge for me. I think that's part of why I haven't been able to connect with my Atlanta chapter or receive the information. I understand that the rosters are outdated. So to me, that's part of the streamlining the tech platform and tools. And so I think we can even do a bit of a tools like communication assessment of where's the adoption right now for some of these mechanisms and how can we increase it. So I hope by the end of my term, I see increased adoption of these tools and usage. And I mean, we can look at the metrics to actually see if those were effective.
Great. One final question that is hopefully a little bit more fun. What is a fond memory you have of being in AAJA? Frank, we'll start with you.
Fond memory of being in AAJ. I mean, got a few, but I would say like I would say Voices for me was a very fond memory, and I did that in 2011 with we were in Detroit. It was a really fond memory because it's just of all the connections that I made and just how right it felt to be there. Like I flew in from Minnesota, went to University of Minnesota. It's very homogenous as well, but I know he won't mind me shouting him out, but my buddy Frank from the West Coast. I mean, I literally met, another Frank that was also wanted to become a journalist when I went to Voices, and that was one of my best memories. And just hanging out with everybody else in that Voices class, and then a lot of them now, are still with AAJ, and we still hang out, and we still see each other at convention, and wherever we can travel to, and be in the same spot. So that's just one of those things that keeps on giving, and that's one of my fondest memories, just my experience in Voices.
Well, Shirley, I think this would be one of the most fond memories for me, only because I think you've all been very welcoming to new members. Clearly, you opened up the election process to anybody who wanted to serve the organization, and I think that indicates to me just how welcoming an organization is, and also open to change and the ideas of its membership. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, great. That concludes the questions portion. We did not receive any questions from members that were pre-submitted, so we will move on now to the closing statements. As a reminder, again, please keep your statements under 2 minutes. We will start with Frank, then go to Amrita.
Thanks, Shirley. As I said a couple times before, and it's probably annoying now, but raising the floor and raising the ceilings is something that I believe a lot in just about everything I try to do, and creating those structures to raise the floor and to raise the ceiling. I think I talked a little bit already about raising the floor, but I just want to touch on like some of the examples of raising the ceiling as well. One thing that I live a lot by, because maybe there's my training background and things like that, but you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's really important to realize, because, who knew you could just reach out to organizations like Johnson & Johnson or companies and be like, hey, have you ever thought about giving us some money to do something cool, right? And I think, unlocking that and making chapters, realize, and working with chapters to help them realize this, right? And to really provide a new definition of what chapters and affinities can do, right? I think affinity groups, they're amazing. There are a lot of them popped up recently. And I think, as a leader, I know we always want to play by the book and understand what's possible, but I don't think we spend enough time reflecting on what is possible beyond what I know right now. So I think as senior vice president or as a organization, we can do that, and we can really raise the bar on what's possible for an organization like ours.
Sure. Yeah, so as mentioned, I'm really looking to serve this organization, get back into journalism, and that's why I want to, be involved here with AAJA. I think the fact that, just because I have not had as much AAJA experience, I don't think that would limit me in my ability to serve. As I noted, as journalists, we're thrown into new situations all the time, and we get the job done. My very first full-time job, I moved out to Guam. I lived there for 2 years. I had no idea. I knew no people. I did not know anything about the island, but I went there, within a few months, went from lifestyle desk to news desk to editor very quickly. And that's because I learned pretty fast. And as I said, I get the job done. I also think that I'm able to bring a lot of the business acumen and leadership skills from my experience working on the business side of technology and media over to AAJA. And I think as a result, I can bring some process improvements and enhancements and get us all working together more and get that engagement increased in the organization. Hopefully even for the forums, we can get more participation, get more excitement, get people to engage a bit further. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you both so much. And thank you everyone who has attended. I really appreciate it on a Friday evening. I know people probably have other plans as well, so we appreciate you sticking it out for a late Friday session today. Just some reminders before we conclude for the day. Excuse me. Voting will begin on Monday, October 3rd. So you will receive a ballot in your inbox via e-ballot. If you did not receive a ballot on Monday, it probably means that your membership has lapsed. So please go check your membership and renew if you don't receive a ballot. The eligibility deadline is Thursday, October 6th. So this coming Thursday, you must join or renew your membership if it has lapsed in order to vote. If you have more questions, you can always email me at vpcoms, that's with 2 M's, at aaja.org. And with that, we can conclude our candidate forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.